Hello, and welcome back to Awakening, Sacred Sacraments and Expanded States of Consciousness as a Path to Enlightenment and Unity. I'm today's host, Michelle Lee, the co-founder with my daughter, Megan Camille, of the Sophia Mystery School. And on today's episode, I am so excited to dive deep with Tigria Gardenia. How'd I do?
You did wonderfully.
Welcome today. I'm super excited. And today, Tigria is a nature-inspired mentor and leadership coach. Her research focuses on plant neurobiology, the effects of plant music on human health. Oh my God, I can't wait to go deep on that. Social innovation, design, and ecosystem thinking for personal and professional growth. She is the founder of the Naturally Conscious Community, an online platform that nourishes plant awareness and affords her clients community support for enhanced evolution. I love that. We're all about evolution. Her roots firmly planted in the arts, communication, science, and the avant-garde. Tigria uses her expertise to empower creatives, multi-potentialities, and nature-inspired professionals to take action with confidence and become the conscious leaders of their lives. She is a world ambassador for plant intelligence, influential speaker, and teacher running courses on reconnection with the plant kingdom to consciously discover the elements of life that nourish you to flourish. Wow, Tigria, I am so honored that you are being so generous with your time and wisdom today. I can't wait to hear how you got into this work.
Oh, let's see. Where shall I begin? No, it's as always, there's always a winding path, isn't there?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to try to find a focal point that makes sense, especially because of the audience, because it's such always a thrill to be able to bring not just the nature inspired work that I do, but connected with all of my spiritual and esoteric background. So I am very excited about all of the topics that are being shown here for that reason. So my background is a little bit windy. I won't go too far into like I was born. I'm not going to go there. But I actually started a good place for me to start is at one point when I used to work at Microsoft. And at one point when I was working at Microsoft, my background is actually in the arts. So I have a degree in music engineering and electrical engineering. And I had sort of lost my way a little bit relating to the arts. And the arts has always been something so important to help really push the envelope, to really help you imagine, to see the things that are unseen in some ways. We can really experience them through music and through art in different ways. And so I was also acting on the side, and I ended up meeting a group of people and got cast in this very strange prayer-formance of all things, a performance that's actually a ritual performance in this big kind of festival-ish type show. And this led to the beginning of my kind of what the spiritual awakening, in the sense that it turns out that the group of people that do this had all been part of a mystery school. And I just sort of stumbled into this from an artistic perspective and ended up like leaving my job and working with these artists. And at one point, the artist that I was working with primarily looks at me and says, "Hey, I really want you to meet my spiritual teacher." And at the time I was like, you know what, look, I had done a bunch of that stuff when I was a kid. I grew up with a lot of those spiritual roots. Luckily, my mother was very open. I saw, and I'm just not there anymore. He was like, no, you don't understand. My teacher is a PhD in like physics and you're going to love her. And he was absolutely right. So this started me with my first path relating to kind of a mystery school and moving down, really being an initiate for the first time, understanding all those aspects. Fast forward a little bit, I become a Kabbalah teacher. I have studied Kabbalah for 15, almost 20 years now. And I am living in Europe. So I've moved from the United States to Europe. And the sister of that teacher comes to visit me and says to me, hey, I'm heading off to Italy. Why don't you meet up with me there? And we can go see that place, Damanhur, we keep hearing about. Now, for those of you that don't know, Damanhur is one of the largest spiritual eco communities in the world. And I came just for the weekend and ended up meeting a group of people here who were like, oh my goodness, you should come live here. And I was like, are you crazy? You know, people living in 20 people in a home, I will kill somebody. Like, I can't do that. But synchronicity has this way of moving things. And sure enough, within 6 months, I was in Damanhur thinking I was just going to spend, actually within 3 months, I was in Damanhur thinking I would spend 6 months here working on a project. And in the end, that was 12 years ago. So Damanhur has this way. So I'm an initiate of the School of Method Action from Damanhur. And here I was where I really had my plant reawakening, which was when I was able to hear for the first time a plant make music using a device called the music of the plants. Now, again, remember, the arts for me has always been my guiding star. It's my way of understanding the world, that way of heading into spaces that are not physical, that are not always verbal. And so all of a sudden, here was a plant playing this music. And to me, it was like language. It was like having a conversation. I could hear what the plant wanted me to know. And we often think of language as music as a type of language, but in reality, it's the opposite. It's really language that's a type of musicality. Music comes first. Music is the rhythms that we, our own bodies, experience, even as small children. And that opened for me the ability to communicate and start conversations with plants, which then stumbled into many different studies over the last 10 years to get where I am today. So you could say that I've been through two major reawakenings. My spiritual reawakening that started way back 20 plus years ago, that led to Kabbalah and esoteric studies and being a ritual magician. And then my plant reawakening, which has taken it to the more than human world, to understanding languages even that go beyond, but that are very still connected to the earth.
Wow, it's so fascinating. And I love your story. You know, you and I were connecting before, and I absolutely love Damanhur. And like I said, I'll be bringing a group to Damanhur in the spring. That's so exciting. Yeah. I fell in love with it just seeing the documentary on Gaia TV, and that you are living there. I mean, when Tori reached out to you and invited you on this production, she's like, she's in Damanhur. And I'm like, what? I mean, I got goosebumps, right? And I'm like, there's another sign, another synchronicity.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that you're doing the plant music. So for those of our listeners that are completely unfamiliar, like, what is this machine? And does every plant have different music? And is it just the machine making the music? Or
It's great questions. Really great questions, because so the music of the plants is a device. It's a small, like, there's a few different models that you could have, but really, if you think about it, it's an instrument. It's a musical instrument for the plant world. It allows a plant to use their electrical signals. So for us as humans, we tend to use either wind or our arms in some ways to make music, right? So I have a guitar and I have a certain amount of strings and I know how to position myself. But it's still me as the human being that's making the music. I have adapted the way that I think about the sounds to the notes that the instrument can produce. The music of the plants really works in the same way. It's a device that takes the electrical signals, so the impedance, the difference between the leaves. My brain's like not working right now. The leaves. I've been talking to plants a lot today, so it's like it takes me a while to get back into human language, so I apologize. But from leaves to the roots, it takes the difference. Now, the reason for this is because we as humans have an electrical system too, right? We know that our neurons fire and such. What science is starting to show us over the last maybe 20 years is that also plants have kind of neuron-like activities. Controversial topic, but really interesting. And so, but plants have always used their electrical signal, or what's called action potentials, to signal different things. And so the difference between us and plants in this way is that plants are conscious of it. They know, can know how to manipulate and use this electrical response in a much more refined way, where we haven't done that because we have movement, right? We have a different form of movement. We can run away with our legs. Plants instead are there, they're rooted, they're sessile, so they've had to develop other skills. So when we discovered this many years ago here in Damanhur, we started playing with the idea of, well, what would happen if we could connect a device to this electrical response and hear what the plants were experiencing? And then so the device really just translates that electrical signal into notes of music. And what happens is, similar to me with a guitar, I maybe play all the different notes that are available to me. And over time, I learn the positioning of my fingers in order to make sounds. Plants do the same thing. They learn the notes that are possible. So you'll often hear a plant when the plant is connected to the device for the first time, the plant will start to randomly play different notes as the plant starts to understand what are the possibilities. And then with time starts to understand, okay, if I send this signal, I'm going to get this note and this. And then they can start making their melodies. They can start interacting with other people, and they can start to use the device in a much more refined. So the longer that they play with the device, the more that they can make music that has more melodies and more opportunities of interaction.
Oh my gosh, I'm in love. I am in love with this. I mean, I'm feeling so emotional. I live in the mountains of Arizona, so I'm surrounded by ponderosa pines and oak trees. And recently on my walk, somebody had planted a little tiny pine tree. And I go up and talk to it every day. I'm like, welcome to the neighborhood. We love you.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I walk around, I'm talking to the trees, I'm welcoming the flowers. So this fact that these plants can play music. So I'm imagining, can I hook this up to my ponderosa pines? Do I hook it up to a trunk, or do I need to be able to reach needles? How does that work?
So the way that the device physically works right now is that you have to connect it to a leaf, or in the case of a conifer, you would connect it to one of the needles and such. So yeah, you kind of do, when it's a ponderosa pine, find a way to how can I climb up there in order to get there? Oftentimes, like you said, it's better to work with the tinier, the little babies that are coming up, the sprouts that are coming in from that perspective. The other thing about the device that I think has been the huge revolution and change, and that has contributed, because you have to think, we here at Damanhur started working with this device in the late 1970s and in the 80s, where we started to really refine and get it. And then it was in 2014 that we launched it on a bigger level to the overall world. And there's been a proliferation of even other types of devices now, thanks to that. So I really do see that the music of the plant has contributed to kind of a plant reawakening that's happened, the big conversations around plant blindness, because it's giving us an opportunity to not just speak to a plant, like you just mentioned. Oftentimes we feel this pull. We go and we see a plant and we're like, hi, how are you? But it's very rare naturally for us to sit and wait for a response.
Yeah.
We know the plants are listening to us, but we forget we can listen to them. And that's been part of the blindness that I think that we as an overall humanity are trying to reawaken from. That's where I talked about that plant reawakening, was not only just seeing the plants, so really taking the blinders off. And now when I walk everywhere, the sidewalk crack and all these, like the tube that has little tiny, what we would consider to be weeds or wild plants growing, or the mosses. I now see them, but more than anything, I can hear them in whatever way that works. Whether it's the music, whether it's something that we think of as telepathic and which science is starting to say, oh yeah, there is something there, or whether it's just a feeling, because plants don't communicate with the regular languages that we speak. So when we start to step deeper into this plant communication, we actually have to use our senses in a whole different way. And I believe that we're actually reawakening even senses, because the plants themselves have about 15 other senses beyond the regular 5 that we have. And so when we start to work with plants in this way, we get to start exercising those senses. And so because we are nature, we forget that, but we actually are nature too. So we start to reawaken what I call our plantness within us. And now, talking about evolution, we're evolving into that really full human being that I can be, that is more than just 5 physical senses locked in this particular way. It has so many different dimensions and aspects to it that now, thanks to this work with the plants, I can tap into.
Wow. So I have so many questions. This is so much fun. So you are listening to plants. So you're talking about like receiving information from them. What does that look like for you?
So for me, it looks in a few different ways. One is definitely the plant music. Without any doubt, I use plant music in many, many different aspects of my life, just because music is sort of an easy channel, you might say. Like when I have a plant, when I'm working with a plant who's playing music, I can really, it's almost like a language that gets strung together. Another thing that I do is I offer botanical tarot card readings. And this is a specific deck that a friend of mine sent me, because she saw it. And as soon as she saw it, she was like, oh my, this is you. And again, similar to the experience with plant music, I thought I was going to be using this deck for my own personal study. So I thought, oh, I'll look at a card which has all kinds of different plants, trees, shrubs, what we would consider weeds, grasses, mosses, all kinds of different plants. So I thought, oh, I can use, I'll pick a card and then I'll spend the day thinking about that plant and I'll try to connect. But I put a card down and something encouraged me to put another card down. And when I had like 3 or 4 out, it was again like a sentence that was stringing itself together. And it's not in a human language, as oftentimes when I give readings, I have to be like, I tell the person, hold on a second, I need to think about how to translate that,
Right.
which is been part of my kind of archetype, the way that I am, because I, even as a Kabbalist, have always used it as a way to translate from a different ways of thinking into the way of thinking that makes sense to the person I'm passing or I'm working with. So for me, those are 2 ways. Another way is through like the senses themselves. So I am clairaudient. I mean, I tend to be somebody that hears things, which is probably why the music was so I kind of have this. It's the sounds. It's if I'm passed by a plant who wants to communicate with me, I'll get something auditory, whether it will be words in my head, which I've learned is not just the crazies, but it's actually really sometimes it's when I discovered I was clairaudient, it opened up an entire world of guidance for me. But oftentimes it'll be some kind of sound. It'll be something audible that will click me into place and then will allow me to connect into that plant. And then that opens me to other sensations. So I trust very much sensations that I get. And then through my esoteric studies, I have come to understand how those represent themselves in my life. So I might get, a sensation in my arm or my knee, or I might get, a certain movement. So I really do use the overall world of senses a lot. And so the clairaudience gives me the listen to me. Mm-hmm. The body is what gives me the receptor for me, that allows me to sort of then start to make connections. And then the other thing that I use a lot is color. So I'll get colors that help me be like, oh, okay, I'm feeling very red. And so therefore, this is probably a topic connected to justice or connected to strengths of some sort. And then it'll help me start moving down the line.
Wow. Powerful, powerful. So I know you have mentioned that one of the benefits of communicating with the plants is developing other senses, just like you described. What are the other benefits of like listening to the plant music? How does that benefit us?
So a big thing that we discovered early on was when we started to speak with the people that were using the music of the plants more often, we found, even here in Damanhur ourselves and some of our experiments, we found that people were having enhancements to their human health. Now, again, remember, 1980s, 1990s, there weren't any real studies on this topic. And so we were starting to see that people were having less colds. They were getting sick less often in general. Their immune systems were stronger. Today, from again, going through the literature and looking at what's happening in the world of connection to plants and to nature, we know that there's a huge health benefit of spending lots of time in nature. It inspires awe, it boosts our immune system, it drops our cortisol levels, so our stress levels go down and all these things. But the plant music itself can also induce many of these same effects and more, because it's as if the plants, depending on how you work with, for example, I do a plant music healing session with my plant partner. I have a plant business partner. His name is Spider Plant. And Spider Plant and I work a lot together. And Spider Plant, for example, one of the things that Spider Plant really loves to do is plant music healing one-on-one. So we don't do group work because that's not Spider Plant's jam. Spider Plant really likes to work one-on-one and finds that when Spider Plant can have that one-on-one connection with a person, can really help work on two phases. This is really Spider Plant's. One is to provide a certain amount of, depending on what the person asks for, an actual healing session, much like you would get from other kinds of modalities. But the second part, which I find really interesting, is awareness. Awareness of what could be the path to healing, or what is the purpose of that, or how does it work for you? So again, opening to what the plants are trying to help us with in general, which is come to a new level of consciousness, come to a new level of awareness, so that we can then make conscious decisions. And so when you talk to Spider Plant during the session and you explain that, I don't know, I have, neck problems, sure, Spider Plant's going to create some relief, but more than anything, Spider Plant is going to work on where is that coming from and help you get a better understanding of how do you go forward? How do you really enhance your healing over time? So that is one way, that one kind of plant in particular. I also did a research study into the effects of plant music on human health, and discovered that in certain protocols, we could work with a plant. In this particular case, it was a plant that grew up in a medical clinic. Oh, wow. And this plant was helping people with diabetes, thyroidism, and hypertension. And so through a specific protocol of plant music healing sessions, the plant was able to help the person, again, with a combination of a little of awareness and a combination of healing. We've also heard from different types of studies, physical therapy, people who are working with and are finding an enhancement or an acceleration of of the effects of their physical therapy work, people who are working it with blood clots and other situations relating to blood in groups. We've heard of many different stories of healers that have found an enhancement, and medical professionals even that have found an enhancement when they bring a plant into the healing work that they're doing.
Oh, so they can bring the plant in, and it doesn't even actually need to be playing music. It's just its presence.
So there's some studies that have been done relating to presence. And so we know that, for example, there was a study even done way back in the 1970s, believe it or not, that if people who were coming out of surgery and in the intensive care unit and they were recovering from surgery, if they had a window with a view of a plant, of a tree outside, they actually healed faster. So there have been now a number of studies around the idea of just having nature in the room, having plants connected to you and being able to see on a regular basis your plants actually has a healing effect on the body. What we find with the music is that it's almost like a channel that brings in this extra awareness piece, where when the plants don't have the music, they can work with you, they can help you and it's a little, there's an enhancement to what's happening. But when you add the music part, there seems to be this part of like the combination of music therapy as well as, plant therapy and horticultural type therapy that brings an enhanced state of awareness into it.
Wow. This is just incredible, fascinating. So, I'm imagining getting one of these devices, right? And I'm just thinking about my house plants and the plants outside and really connecting with them. But if somebody's not going to get the device, is there a way to get plant music recordings?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there's multiple places. Even if you just go to my website /Music of the Plants, you'll see a page that has the device, but it also has many different artists that have created plant music and have shared plant music. I also have several artists that I've worked with, and I share that on my SoundCloud and in other places, because we want now to see more interspecies music. And there's several artists that are now focusing, like Master Plants is an interspecies group that is even creating a different device based on our technology, but it's an enhanced device because it can take more combination of plants and humans playing together. Because there is something, what's the right word? Otherworldly about an interspecies band. There's something that connects us to more access points. Like we said, music already touches us in places that we can't always understand. But imagine when you add that extra layer of also that connection to not just the human experience and the human emotions, but also the plant experience and plant emotions. Because one of the things that is really difficult is it's very easy to anthropomorphize our plants, to think of our plants as humans. So we think they're happy or sad or all these things. But in some ways that diminishes their power, because a plant has a whole range of other emotions and experiences that if we just let go of the idea of having to label them with some human words right now and understand them through our own emotions, but we just let them wash over through our body, we can start to then interact with the plant for the being and the person that the plant is, rather than trying to lock them into the same human mold that we've unfortunately locked ourselves. Yeah. So when I can see a plant as a person with all of that plantness, then all of a sudden, again, I ask myself, well, wait a minute, what's my humanness for real? And what's my plantness from within that? And it starts to, again, give me spaces to move and allows me to give myself permission to believe that I'm much more than what I am right now.
Expanded consciousness.
And that's it.
Love it. Curious. And I don't know, we're talking about expanded consciousness, and we're also talking about sacred sacraments. And those are plant medicines. I remember going like, oh, I wonder what kind of music mushrooms would play, or ayahuasca, the ayahuasca plant. Have you done anything like that?
There have been several experiments done with not necessarily mushrooms, which are another kingdom, and the device. Some people have modified it, and it's really interesting to hear, but they are a different, I have to qualify always that they are a different kingdom and they have their own experiences. But for example, the ayahuasca vine, or going into, things like peyote and other master plants. But not only that, we start to also hear, for example, people do plant dietas with many kinds of plants, even non-psychotropic plants. Like, for example, I did a whole dieta series with dandelion. And I have to say that listening to the music as I was doing the dieta, doing that type of ritual drinking and the elixir and the experience really brought up a whole new level. Because again, beyond just the things that I normally, nothing's normal about those types of, as you know, but in other words, in addition, I brought in another aspect, the whole aspect of the arts, the whole aspect of kind of almost the astral in a way that was more comfortable. So for me, it was an easier avenue in some aspects. So this really starts to help us see how many different types of plants. And for example, if you take, I use a lot of anointing type of oils and different oils, and listening to the music connected to those oils. Or if you do flower essences, connecting to the music of those plants that you, so it really is adding another dimension of ways for you to connect and work with those plants.
My mind is just blown. I just love this so much. I could talk to you forever. This is just amazing.
I know, right? Imagine working with it all the time. It's like sometimes I have to tell them all. There's many plants, you can't see them, but there's like a whole wall of plants in front of me and all the way around. And sometimes I'm like, it's too much. I need a break. I need a break.
That's just incredible. That's incredible. Well, our time is running out. So I would love for you to share with our listeners your free gift. You have a free gift for them, and how to connect with you and how you work with people.
So my free gift is, I have a quiz called What's Your Spirit Wild Plant? We talk so much about spirit animals all over the place, but who talks about our spirit plants? No one. And yet our wild plants, the what sometimes are called weeds, but they're really wild plants all around us, are amazing companions of resilience and of support. I mean, they've been growing in places abandoned. When you've tried to get rid of a dandelion and see what happens. Like, totally the emotion evoked it's completely the embodiment of resilience. So this quiz helps you identify a spirit wild plant that wants to work with you, and then gives you a whole series of rituals and connection for you to be able to kind of enter into this deeper relationship with this plant.
Wow.
In reference to work. Oh, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. That's so exciting.
Yeah. And so in reference to working with me, so I work in a few different levels. Mainly I do one-on-one work with people who want to really, from a mentorship and a coaching perspective. So people who want to go through professional and personal growth, but want to do it in a natural way, in a way that is what I call naturally conscious, that helps you step into these expanded senses, to use them to really make conscious choices and into everything that they do. And then all of my work, regardless of whether you're doing one-on-one or my classes, are all within a safe environment, this naturally conscious community that I founded, because I believe that it's always important for us to have that community support. I mean, when we think about it, when we look at it from a natural approach, we know that the ecosystems that have the greatest diversity are the ones that co-evolve fastest. This is the way we're going to get there. And this is the reason why I myself live in community, because sharing who I am in front of others is what helps me see the mirrors between the behaviors of others and myself, who I want to be. They help accentuate all these parts. So all of my work is really done both one-on-one as well as in a community. And so we do coaching and mentorship programs, as well as I also teach plant communication, and I do master classes and courses relating to these topics.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. Thank you for being here with us today and with your gifts. I just so much appreciate it.
It is absolutely my pleasure. I mean, if there's been one thing that has been so rewarding, it is sharing this information, because again, that sharing, every time we have these conversations, so much more comes up, so much more comes out. And as I keep looking at your plant in the background, I'm like, oh, yeah, awesome. Exactly. And I'm like, okay, I wonder what you're going to tell her as soon as we're done.
I know. I love it. I know. I was wondering, I was like, oh, does she notice Oscar right there?
Of course.
Thank you.
And see, this is the thing we do. You just said it. We know their names. We know who they really are. And yet we still don't always take the time to listen. So I'm super excited to hear what changes for you after this conversation in your relationship with Oscar, and what Oscar is going to be able to now consciously and directly transmit to you. And I hope the same thing for everybody who's listening. So come join the Naturally Conscious community and tell me all about it, because I want to hear it. And all of us there want to hear about it.
Yes, absolutely. So exciting. Thank you again. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in for this episode of Awakening. We will see you next time. Bye for now.